I'll give it like a 10-second buffer zone. Oh man, these are comfy. Dang, these are comfy. Hi, welcome back to Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Robb. I'm on location in Kelowna with Unknown Persona, a multi-talented artist based out of Kelowna. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to talk.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you introduce yourself, basically, and then we'll dive into it.
My name is Jacob Crystal. I go by the artist name Unknown Persona, and that was originated from not knowing what to do with my life and not knowing who I am, so my persona is kind of unknown. I have all these different interests and skills and talents, from singing and dancing to rapping and martial arts and stuff, so I just basically love to entertain in all shapes and forms.
I love that. How long have you been doing music? Like, how long have you been pushing yourself as an artist? When did that start?
I guess it technically started in high school, so about probably 2010, but I haven't been professionally doing it for about 5 years.
Okay, so you're doing pretty good for being the 5-year mark. You're doing real well.
I like to say 3 because I don't count when COVID happened, those 2 years.
Fair enough.
But yeah, 5 years pretty much.
That's awesome. So the beginning of your process when you became choosing to be an artist, which did you choose form? Like, which form did you choose first? Did you choose dancing? Did you choose music? You do magic too, so that's kind of a unique aspect that you don't hear often, so.
I think at first it was like drawing and stuff. I used to make my own little comic books. And then I guess it was magic tricks. And that's when I like discovered entertainment and like getting responses out of people. And then I just loved music and movies, and it's something I've always looked up to. And so, yeah, I guess music was next, and now I'm pursuing acting, taking film school and stuff, so.
That's wicked. Acting, it's a whole other venture. I did background acting, and
yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
How are you enjoying it?
It's fun, yeah.
It's a totally different experience once you go behind the scenes. Like, I'm a movie person, so when you're watching the movie and then you realize the background, you start to watch it more often.
Exactly, yeah. I noticed that now.
Do they make you do the whole watermelon fruit speaking under your breath, like invisible talking of watermelons?
Oh, not yet.
That?
Any scenes I did, I've only done 2 movies, and one was I was just a jogger running by, and the other one we were these religious people in a cult, and we just were praying in a circle.
That's awesome. I did a bunch of Hallmark films where you have to talk in the background of like a diner scene, and all they make you do is mouth watermelon and different types of fruit and vegetables.
Interesting. Okay.
You're really like under your breath and just mouthing it, and it's funny because as soon as they cut scene, you tend to laugh with the other background actors because it's really difficult to try and act when you're not talking. And I find that is a very difficult thing.
And not start laughing or something?
Yeah, and then the complete opposite with music, where you're so energetic and upfront with it, right? Acting's just, I find it blends really well, especially with like music videos and being able to act as on stage. It is kind of like when you're performing, you are acting, right?
Yep, I would say so, yeah.
And I've seen a lot of your performances online that you share, and I find it really entertaining to see that you can dance, do backflips off the stage, and still get up and perform without being out of breath.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? Do you practice by just running around?
Basically, I was also really into parkour, so I guess I have a good cardio.
Okay.
And yeah, I would just practice jumping around my room while singing and dancing. I saw something Miley Cyrus would do is run on a treadmill while doing her song.
Oh wow.
So I haven't done that yet, but
I can imagine that would help, especially if you're a front person has to move around a lot versus like musicians. We speak a lot with musicians who play an instrument or play drums, but when hip hop is a totally different entity in the music industry that I find is very underrated. People enjoy hip hop, but they don't give the artists themselves enough credibility for how much they're jumping around, still maintaining breath to perform the songs. It's a lot of work.
yeah, I don't really show it, but after I walk off stage, I'm like almost passing out.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's one thing I find is like the moment I step off stage, I'm on my knees like hyperventilating because all of everything I put into it, right?
I should have stretched.
Quite literally, especially the older I get and playing in metal, when you're doing the stupid leg stances and you're dropping, oh man, I pull legs constantly. It's quite entertaining. When you're writing, so I want to dive into the music aspect, like when you want to start a song, because hip hop is very freeing versus, I find, compared to rock and metal where you have to speak in metaphor. Hip hop, you can do it and say whatever you want. There's really no limit as to what emotions you can present. So when you're diving into a song and you want to create a new beat and then the lyrics, like how do you start your process?
I would say there's probably two different ways. Either I already have an idea pop into my head and I try and lay that down through a beat and start writing it, or I'll get into my voice memos. Or what I usually do now is I'll find a beat that I really like and I'll just record myself freestyling, and eventually I'll say dope things here, dope things there. Sometimes it's nonsense, but it's fun to like put it all together like a puzzle after the fact and start building it.
Yeah, that is a great process to go about, because I feel like it's freeing, but at the same time it keeps you in structure, because sometimes if you're going to it without any idea, you end up with the weirdest concepts and you end up throwing those in the garbage. Do you find, like, there's a running theme that I find through musicians that transcends their genre, and that is that when they're writing lyrics, it's almost as if something is helping them that they don't know. Like, lyrics are just flowing through them and they don't know where they're coming from. And then down the road, these lyrics end up making sense. Does that happen with you as well?
Yes, all the time. I've always wondered, like, are these words being sent to me from somewhere else? Like, because sometimes you'll say things that are just that's the best line I've ever said. Where did that come from? How did I just say it like that? And then years later, you're like, wow, this song is super relevant to like things or issues today. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Either things just didn't change, or it just, that's how music works, I guess. I don't know.
I often find that we're the bards of nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, bards used to tell the stories and keep those stories going. And I feel like nowadays as musicians, there's a lot of things that are happening that have happened through the last 50 years that are kind of repeating. But us as artists get these weird glimpses of the future through lyrics that we tend to put down, and they become relevant, like you said, down the road. Like, there's songs today that are becoming popular that were written in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? That are now extremely relevant to everything going on. So music is this weird form of art, because I find, like, I love painting and I love dance, but it doesn't transcend in the same aspect of music, where a specific dance isn't going to last, thousands of years, or hundreds of years, because it'll change. But the song that's recorded and written, that it will always be. And there's something magical about that, I find.
Yeah, I agree.
Music is, I don't know, especially with hip hop, it's freeing. Like I was saying earlier, it's being able to express yourself in to micro aspects through lyrics, where people hear it and connect with you, is powerful. And I find that hip hop is a massive entity in the music industry, and it's only getting bigger. Do you see you weaving your way in different directions, as not just being a hip hop artist, but maybe expanding into having live bands, or adding doing something theatrical because you do so much?
Yes, I have been recently drifting off towards different genres and stuff, because I've noticed not everybody's into rap, but pop and rock and dance and R&B can connect to almost everyone, and those also bleed into hip hop as well. So I find myself more of a singer than a rapper, so I'll always have that and do hip hop, but I definitely want to be a singer and make all kinds of music.
Singing, I admire that, mainly because most people avoid singing. Most males will avoid singing, especially unless they're in a rock band, right? there's this weird thing, I don't know, maybe it's just my mind, but like males who sing don't get as much credibility as females who sing. And you have to work almost 10 times harder as a male to prove that you're a talented singer versus instantly you hear a female singer and they sound good and you're like, oh, okay, they're a good singer. But with males, it's hard to be diverse, have a range, and be able to express it in a way that people aren't just going to slough off. Do you find that you deal with that at all?
I can't say I do, no.
That means that you're writing good music, I feel. Cause,
okay. Or just I don't pay attention to it maybe, or I'm unaware of it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard to express. Like, I'm sure as a musician you understand there's like the weird self-doubt that tends to happen, that you're always fighting, but the end of the performance, when everyone's clapping and cheering, that self-doubt tends to just disappear. And there's this weird time in between when you're realizing your art. So you're like the first 3 years, you're realizing what you write, what sound you want to be, who you want to be. And at first it's hard to get that out to people where they're gonna take it in, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And to get out there when you're dealing with a local scene that's very small, is it a challenge for you to, like with hip hop, is it difficult for you to find your place as not being a strict hip hop artist, but like as a singer, as a dancer, as an artist, not just a rapper?
Yeah, I do find it a little difficult because on one side it's just the difficulty of decision making, and even like, should I change my name, just be Jacob, or stay unknown persona? And there's also just like the difficulties of being put into that category. Oh, you're a rapper. We won't take you as seriously as this guy who's doing everything else or whatever, you know?
Do you find that, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. Do you find that it's difficult being an artist who is extremely diverse, can do multiple things like instruments and stuff, when you're dealing with artists who don't, and you see them progressing further? Because this is something like, this is a personal question from me to you as an artist to artist, because I see that like as an artist who plays multiple instruments and writes their own instrumentals, I find it's harder for people to relate to my music because it's not the basic boom bap beat or the basic trap beat. When you're trying to expand musically and be more diverse, it's hard to find that connection until people realize what you're trying to do. Do you find when you're writing music that your music's gravitating, like you said earlier, you're becoming more of an artist, so you use different aspects, R&B, hip hop? Like, which genres of yours is the most powerful in your mind that is taking off? Because you do a ton, and you've worked with a ton of huge artists.
I'll say hip hop is the first one, but other than that, I would have to say R&B and pop.
Interesting, because R&B is one I've never fully dove into. So I'm going to start picking your brain on the R&B aspect, because hip hop is, everybody loves hip hop, but R&B that's soul.
Yeah.
That's like blues. There's something different. There's almost a spiritual aspect to R&B, which I really admire. Is it hard to write R&B? Like that soul versus hip hop, which is attitude. You know what I mean? Like, I find that would be a hard transition for me personally. Do you find that difficult to like bounce back and forth between the two with what you want to do?
I don't really find it difficult, no. I do a similar thing where I just freestyle when I make music, but when it's R&B or songs where I'm not rapping, I find it much easier because I'm like freestyling slower. I don't know, so my brain has more time to think, and I just connect more to the elements and different corners of R&B and what they talk about, like, you know, love songs and relationships and how you feel and stuff.
I think that's really cool, because most guys avoid our emotions.
Exactly,
So being an artist who is like willing to open up and talk about love and relationships and stuff, I think is powerful. Instead of like running away from how you feel, you're expressing it through beauty, if that makes sense. Because music is and will always be a universal language. You don't have to speak the same language as someone to be able to go jam with them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I find it extremely powerful when an artist can express themselves in full and they're not putting on like an image. Because a lot of what turned me off of hip hop for years was that image, that having to be hard. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to be a talented rapper. And I think there's a lot of people out there who prove that. Like, image is one thing, but the art that you create is really what kind of separates you from everyone else. Because everyone can do trap, everyone can rap if you really put into the effort. But what you're saying and the message that you're trying to put out is really what matters. And I find with R&B, like you were saying, it's love, it's relationships, it's empowering. I feel like there's more, like we need more of that in music. So I'm very thankful that you do that, especially in our scene, which is, Kelowna is very based, like Vancouver and Kelowna are very connected in the sense of the Stomp Down crew, the Battle Axe Warriors, like they kind of created that hip hop scene here that died out and is still trying to cling, but that sound is old now and there's a new sound coming, and it's cool to see the artists who are branching out from that to prove who they are in our scene. And I feel like you're one of them, which is why I wanted to sit down, because there's a lot of hip hop artists here, but there's not as many in my mind that are as diverse as you are in the ability to be able to, you're an entertainer. You're not a hip hop artist. You're a performer.
Yes.
And that's magical, because I think a lot of people focus on one aspect of what they're good at and then they stick to that and they don't branch out. So to be able to sit down with you and hear, like diving into your perspective, because in my mind the show's based off unique people and you're very unique in the aspect of an artist. So
Thank you.
When we got into music, and I'm sidetracking and I apologize, when it comes to your lyrics and the way you want to write, like what is your favorite topic to speak about besides obviously relationships and love?
I guess originally it started with what I found to be truth, or maybe a little bit of conspiracy, or just making people think. I wanted to make people go, what did you just say? And question things around them. And I guess also like the fantastical, like the unknown, aliens and stuff, like who knows, magic, wizards, or things that aren't real, things that are basically just things that I enjoy and think about a lot.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm all for conspiracies. I find them extremely entertaining and fun to dive into. And I find a lot of hip hop artists do follow a lot of conspiracies. Like they're like Vinny Paz, for example.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like the man is all over conspiracies. And then you've got Hobson with his like industry conspiracies. And I think it's really relevant towards hip hop artists to be into conspiracies, because it's that unknown, like you said, the truth. You're trying to find and give little hints of reality in a different aspect than just like, here it is. And there is a lot of crazy things that go on, and music is kind of one of them, as we've seen in the past couple months and the last year in the music industry. Like, there's a lot of crazy things that happen. So, but like diving into aliens, that's another one that I think a lot of artists do as well. Like one of the biggest songs by Blink-182 is about aliens. You know what I mean? It's a running theme through musicians, I think, is that unknown and trying to write about it. And there's one thing I admire too, is like fantasy. That's why I gravitate to metal, is like fantasy. You can write about swords and stuff, and not like if I was to rap about swords and stuff, people would look at me like I'm crazy. So it's funny. So diving into, I want to talk about acting, because you've done a couple roles for local films, and one of them I saw where you're dealing with a guy on a swing. And it's like you're supposed to play this like extremely rude character. Do you find it hard to put yourself in that position?
Kind of funny? No, I don't.
But no, man, that's exactly how I roll. Because I had an audition for a role like that, and I found it really hard to like put myself in the position to treat someone really bad, but at the same time, I'm like, this is my job, and like, I don't know. I just found it funny. I think there's a lot, and then when you're acting, how do you put yourself in the perspective of, this is what I got to do, and this is the person I am? How do you separate you from an actor, from the character?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've like really thought about it, but I think I connect myself to moments in my past and like anything that I've seen on television or movies as well, and just draw inspiration from those and just basically become someone else. Just become this character and just forget who I am. And yeah, one thing I've learned is that once you know your lines, it's like acting is so much easier. It's called being off book, and it's like if you have to remember what you're trying to say, it's like it really gets in the way, and it's really helped to like know what you're saying, and then you can really step into the character and really act better, I guess.
Acting is a really hard thing.
It definitely is. It's much harder than I thought.
It is, honestly, and like, because there's acting, but then there is being the character.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people in like actors that really stand out are the ones who can be the character, like the Heath Ledgers and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The ones that are like the method actors, I guess is what they call it. But it's like, to get into that mindset, it's as we've seen with those actors themselves, like it can almost take over.
It can be dangerous.
It can be very dangerous, and I feel like the same thing kind of happens with your character as an artist. Like, the bigger you get as an artist, you're going to gain more attention, and that attention leads to ego, and that ego leads to a lot of bad things as an artist, right? But it's the characters we have to play that are giving the entertainment, which is almost like a really weird concept. Like but like you're killing yourself to be an entertainer in the long run, because you don't get to fully be. There is always going to be this character that you portray on stage versus the person you are behind closed doors. It's because it's comfort. Like most artists who are really obnoxious on stage and high energy are very subtle and quiet at home. They're not really crazy. They like to enjoy their quiet time. That's when they get it out, is on stage. Mm-hmm. And I find that balance can be very difficult with music, with acting, with any art form that you choose, is trying to separate emotion from the art that you're doing, if that makes sense. Because there's an emotional aspect towards what you're doing as an actor, as a musician. But there's also like your duty to accomplish the goal and the job that has to be separate from the emotional aspect as an artist. So when you're going into, for show's example, and trying to give yourself a price, like pricing yourself is hard in any aspect as an artist, whether you're a painter, an actor. I guess actors get paid X amount of money because of the contracts, but as musicians, like you're creating music from the bottom of your soul and then putting it out to the world, and to turn that into something that is long-term, a lifestyle, is very difficult. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of support from spouses. And do you find, or what do you find has been your biggest difficulties becoming an artist to this day?
I would have to say the growth. Trying to grow your fan base and get more people to hear you and know you, and basically just expand and get out there. I think that's what I struggle with the most.
Do you find it's difficult having to separate yourself from being the musician and then having to have like social media presence? Or does that work really well with you? Like, do you find it's easy to be an artist and social media artist?
I find it pretty easy. I think it blends together very well.
I find it difficult, and I feel like I find that like being a dancer might be definitely help towards that, because you can dance to your own music and things like that help. Do you find it's difficult? Like, what avenues do you struggle besides just trying to get heard? Because that's a very common one for musicians, is trying to get your music out there. But do you find it's hard to maintain that hype after a new song, because I find that's very difficult nowadays.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Like, you used to be able to drop a song and people would be sharing it a month later and like, this is still fire, but now it's like 2 days. So I find it's definitely difficult to like get yourself out there. Do you find you have a specific platform that works best for you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram and Spotify
Okay.
and Facebook.
I find it's good to have the diversity of all of them, but I feel it's hard to work on all of them at once while still trying to maintain being an artist, right? That's where it's like, I think that's become the modern day, the biggest struggle for artists is how do we, that's what I mean by the balance point. Like, how do
all
we,
of it. It's like,
like, how can you write the music, live the life that you have to still do with work, perform, then on top of that, you got to create content. You've got to be original content. You can't just like stand in front of your phone. People don't really care about that. It's got to be original and unique and cool, but just thinking of the content takes so much time that it's taking away from writing. Does that become an issue with you? Do you find that you struggle with like trying to balance writing, being the artist, and also trying to grow your following online, because it's a totally different world nowadays?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, because it can definitely be overwhelming with a lot of different corners and avenues you got to deal with. It's like a lot on your plate. Sometimes you don't pay attention to other things that you should be, or you don't put as much effort into one thing you should have. It makes it kind of not as good as you want it to be.
Do you find that when you're which do you prefer, performing, writing? Like, what is your favorite aspect of being the artist? Like, what is when you finally that is done, you're like, yes, I've done it?
I would say performing. Yeah.
It's just such a good feeling.
Yeah.
There's nothing better. I wish like we could express the feeling of the moment a set is done to the people behind the camera, like who don't perform music, because it's like the one thing that the show is like based on is trying to get that. I hate to say spiritual, but it is a very spiritual thing when you're connecting with people musically versus like just basic conversations. There's just something magical about music that I love. And I wish you could like, there was words that could describe it, but there's not. It's like, it's just a feeling. And that feeling doesn't have a word.
Yeah.
And it's that's all that I can say for that. But I find that being a musician, performing is like the ultimate goal. You want to get there, but I find we also tend to rush it. And that was one of my biggest downfalls as an artist when I started hip hop, was I rushed into performing without having a sound or even really being good. Like, I listen to songs from when I started and they're terrible. You know what I mean? And I'm like, why? How did people even come to my shows? Growth as an artist is magical. Do you find that over the 5 years that you've been an artist, you've changed the way you write or the things you write about or how you write?
Yeah, I definitely think it's evolved. Probably don't write about certain things that I know might not be appropriate or might trigger, or because we now live in a world of you want to not get canceled and stuff, so you got to be careful, but still try and say your truth and how you feel, but respect everybody.
Do you find that hard to navigate?
Not really, no. I wish I could be like, hey, F the police, but
Right. I find it's the hardest thing about being an artist now is trying to be able to speak truth and getting in trouble for it.
Yeah.
I find it's difficult, and like I've noticed I've given myself a challenge writing the EP that I'm currently finishing. Is I didn't want to swear because I have kids and they're
That's what I'm doing as well. Try not to swear at
and
all.
I find it's almost more difficult to write a song that hits hard without an F-bomb here. It's really hard to craft something that is well said without swears. And I think the best artists do it, honestly. Like, my favorite artist, my favorite hip-hop artist I found in the last 3 years is NF. There's something that dude does he's magic.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that he doesn't swear.
He doesn't swear at all.
He doesn't even swear.
Not a single swear in any of his songs, and it's because of his religious views, but just who he is as a person. But his music hits so much harder without just random swears in them. And I feel like as an artist, the older we get, we do that. We kind of like have to like step back and like, yeah, like people don't talk about smoking as much. And like when I see a friend of mine who's rapping in his late 30s about smoking, you know what I mean, in a song, I'm kind of like, bro, it's time to grow up. We don't need to talk about it.
Especially when it's like almost every song. I'm like,
exactly,
okay.
right? So I understand what you mean by like you stepped away from talking about certain things because like you grow as an artist and you grow up. And I feel like the best music we write is when we're like older. And I've always never understood the music industry why they always went for like the young stars who have no life experience and they're just talking about like the 5 years that they've lived through high school and they're writing songs about that versus like listening to the people who are in their 30s and late 20s who have dealt with like crazy life experience. I feel those people tend to gravitate to a lot of hip hop, those kind of artists, and the best hip hop artists are the ones who have had struggles. And it just makes their music better. You know, like if you didn't have the background that you did or I had the background I did, I don't think we would write the music we do.
No.
You know what I mean? Because life, it isn't peachy, but you can take the pit and grow a peach tree. You know what I mean? Like you can take the issues in life and make something magic out of it. And those are the artists that I gravitate towards. And the older I get, you really start to see the realness in artists. Like a lot of the artists that I grew up looking up to, the older I get, the more I realize they're not, almost that they've lost their truth as an artist with their fame.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of artists locally, well not locally, but like big artists from BC too that I feel started off very humble, independent, and the bigger they got, they started to talk about things that aren't relevant to like their fan base. Do you find it hard to keep relevant to a fan base? Or do you find it easy because of what you speak about is truth and emotion that people gravitate to your music more?
I probably find it slightly difficult, but for the most part, like enjoyable. So it's kind of easy, yeah.
What's your favorite aspect about being an artist?
Probably just making it, the art itself, and being able to create something that lasts and that might inspire, motivate, or help people.
As an artist, do you find that you write for you or do you write for other people?
I would say either both or it switches back and forth sometimes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I definitely tend to write for me in the sense of like tackling my emotions or the things that I want to say, but you can't really express out. You put it into words. And I find that those are the songs that people tend to gravitate to more than the ones that I write for people. Oh, I want to write a banger that's got a dope beat that people dance to. Like, no one cares about that versus like the really deep, sappy song. And I find that it's really hard for me to like find that middle ground of what people want and what I want as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that when you're, like, does that ever hinder you with writing? Does that ever become a block?
It has, yeah. Just like, it becomes like self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Self-doubt is it's worse than ego.
Mm-hmm.
It honestly is, because you know what you write is good. You know good music. So clearly, if you're liking it and you enjoy it, it's not biased, you know what I mean? Just because it's yours. I find it's very difficult to finally accept that what you do is what you do. The sound you have that is created is what you are. And that just getting it out there is the best thing. Because, for example, one of my favorite songs is a song that's 10 years old that I released. And I just started promoting it, and it's getting a lot of views now. And it's a 10-year-old song, and for the longest time, it's an old song. I don't want to do nothing with it. It's old to me. Mm-hmm. There are 8 billion people on the planet who haven't heard it. And when you're growing and it's like, oh, I'm not getting any growth, like it's just kind of stagnant, there's 8 billion people out there who haven't heard it. So it's like
Exactly.
it's defeating at first until you realize like there are so many people out there. The hardest part is just how do you get to them, especially in a world with 3-second attention spans. Trying to like that's the hardest because you can see it in your reels when you're going through people how long they watch your stuff for. Do you find it hard to create engaging content?
I don't think I find it hard, no. I just find it a challenge. Yeah.
How so?
Trying to find out or figure out what is engaging to people and how to make it engaging. That is what I'm challenged with.
I can understand that. It's definitely it's a weird aspect trying to dive into like the social media elements of being an artist. And I don't think a lot of people realize like people listen to our music, like they'll put your song on, they listen to your music, but they don't realize how much effort actually goes into releasing a song.
Yeah.
Right? Like they take 3 to 10 seconds to look at the reel of the new song you put out, but that song took 6 months, if not longer, to create, and the amount of hours put into it. I find that is the most defeating thing for me as a musician, is the amount of time put in to the amount of attention out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what defeated me for a long time. Was it felt almost hopeless, but then I remembered like I do it for the love of the music. Do you ever get to a point where you're like, have you ever had a point in your career so far that where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore?
I've had moments where I was down. I'm like, you know, you just feel like, what's the point? Kind of, I guess, a little bit of depression. Just no one cares, kind of stuff. Kind of like there's a song by my favorite artist, Childish Gambino. It's on his last album. The chorus is like, nobody gives a F.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so relatable. It's like,
Childish Gambino is a hero. I love
Yeah.
Danny Glover. He is, and another actor who is an artist, right? Like that dude is one of the funniest people on the planet, and he is so talented. And people didn't even realize he rapped. He just came out of nowhere and was like, "I want to do a hip hop album." Took over the industry, and that's like that's cool that Childish Gambino is an inspiration for you because I'd say he's like upper echelon of what I've always wanted to achieve as like a multi-talented artist, not just a metal musician or a hip-hop artist. I also find the older I get, the more less I want to be on stage and more behind the stage promoting the shows, just because I don't know why, honestly. But when you're performing, like, because you've been doing a bunch of shows lately for the one you just did recently, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Sorry, I'm spacing on
for
it.
Kelowna,
Yeah.
Kelowna's Top Talent?
Yes. When you're doing these, do you find it like, are you competing with other artists who are doing hip hop, or are they just singers and songwriters or dancers, or like, it's because it's an element of like, I don't want to say competition, but competition that I've never seen.
Yeah, for that one, it was a lot of other singers, guitar players, and even like, I don't know what you would call it. She was like doing I don't know what you'd call it. She had a big hoop and she was doing circus, kind of Cirque du Soleil, kind of acrobatic stuff.
Yeah, almost like the silk spinners kind of concept.
Like an artistic kind of performance.
Okay. That's actually really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be intimidating to do. I've done one competition with my very first band, the Pasties from Penticton, and we lost to like a 6-year-old girl or like 8-year-old girl who danced, but she was like the best dancer in the dance thing, and it was like these 5 high school dudes standing next to this little girl we just lost, and the prize was recording time. And she quite literally just handed us over the prize on stage because she's the dancer and we're a band. And it was like, we still lost, but she gave us the prize. And it was like, it's the only time I've ever been in a competition, really, besides recently with the Whackin' one. But I find that that's a whole other ball game, trying to get into those kind of performances, I guess it is. Because are you self-managed, or do you have somebody who helps you get into these kind of things?
I'm pretty much self-managed, yeah.
Okay. So you're applying for all of this, and do you find that it's hard to self-manage?
Yep. It's a lot of work.
It is very hard. I think it's challenging, but I mean, it is the best. Unless you have someone who is dedicated to you as much as you are, it is really hard to find a manager, especially this day and age where everything is kind of, you got to pay for it. And used to be managers would be like, they would do the work and get the payment. Nowadays, artists have to put in so much more effort, and it's almost become like management just becomes booking. There's no like actual like, where before managers would be setting up your music videos and your tours and you had a tour manager. It's now artists are more, they're managers and they have a booking agent who helps them with their shows.
Yeah.
Locally, you've been performing for 3 years, because COVID we won't consider. During COVID, what did you manage, like how did you, that's when you started? Is that when you started performing as Unknown Persona?
No, probably a year or two before COVID, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you noticed has changed since pre-COVID to post-COVID? In the hip-hop scene, at least.
Can't really think of much that has changed besides maybe people being afraid to go out to a show. So it's harder to get crowds and sell tickets and stuff.
Who do you usually perform with?
Mostly I've performed with Hazy Maid and Strain K.
Okay.
He's put me on a lot of shows, and recently I was doing some shows for Caveman Casanova on some of his tours.
Okay, is he from here?
He is from...
Because I know he just played in Penticton a couple months ago, and I wanted to go to the show.
Yeah, he's from... He lives up in the Shuswap over by Chase, but he's from like the other side of Canada. I can't remember
Okay.
exactly
But he's
where.
not from Kelowna.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you guys played... Did you perform with him at the Hub?
Yes.
The Hub is a wicked venue. Shout out to the Hub. I really enjoy them. What they're doing for... Them and Clancy's right now are probably like some of my favorite venues for what they're willing to do, because like they're the ones who host the hip hop and the metal, and it'd be cool to see that expand a little bit. With do you ever work with like the Big Valley Battles guys?
I just had a meeting with them yesterday, just talking about events and stuff. I haven't like worked with them yet, but I'm in that circle. I know some of the performers and some of the people who set that up.
Okay, I know that they've been around for a while, and my old business partner is the one who started it. Kyle Kiba was my business partner for Mad Melody Records. So when we were doing that, I know he started that, and it's just kind of cool to see them. When I died out and kind of went and dealt with my own issues in life and had to grow up, seeing him take the hip hop scene to where it is now with the Big Valley Battles, and then to see him handing it off to somebody else, for me, is mind blowing. But the guys who are in charge of it, from what I hear, are doing really well. And it's cool to see that they're still bringing that hip hop vibe, because Kelowna had a really wicked hip hop vibe. Like, if you think about, I want to say 10 years ago, before Stefan Golden BVS, I guess his name is nowadays. I'm used to him as Golden Child. So when he was starting out, you know what I mean? Like, that's when I was performing, and these were the guys who were opening for me. So it's kind of weird to see them, like,
trippy.
You know what I mean? Like, they're huge now. And I'm like, I love to see that our artists in Kelowna, especially in Penticton, is like, we're this little nook of BC that no one really thinks about other than wine. But like, the talent that can come out of here and has come out of here is mind blowing. And is still coming out of here. Like, if you actually take a step back and look at the Kelowna Penticton music scene and the caliber of bands, artists, performers, dancers, it's mind-blowing. Like, we put Vancouver and Calgary up for runs constantly. And I think that it's just because we're not on the main highway that causes us to be like, Kamloops is on the main highway, so they get all the big shows. But like, we don't... Kelowna used to get like Method Man coming through and stuff, and you see it not happening as much anymore with the lack of venues and COVID doing that. But District is still holding it down. Denenzi's hosts hip hop shows, and I feel like that would be one of the funnest venues for hip hop show because it's so small that it's like,
Oh, I've done quite a few there.
and they just get packed,
Yeah.
right? So like, it's cool to see the venues that do allow hip hop and metal and stuff because like those are the funnest music genres in my mind. The fan base for both of them, they cross over really well, first of all, which is why I like to perform with both of them. But they're such dedicated fans. Like hip hop fans will always go to their favorite hip hop artist show and go hard. But you don't see that for a singer songwriter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, someone with education, like no one's going to their shows, every show religiously, and going hard. So I don't know. There's just our scene is very. I hate to say the word unique because it's so cheesy because that's the name of the show, but like the Okanagan music scene is very unique, not only for the diversity of sound we have, but the like amount of musicians that have come out of here that are big, that nobody really notices. Excision, Datsik, Downlink, Golden BVS. I'm pretty
Isn't
sure
it
The
BSP?
Wild. It might be, yeah, BSP. I know it's Buckshot Pony. Yes,
Okay, yeah.
It's Buckshot Pony. That's what it is. But yeah,
yeah, I didn't even know that.
I always switch it around, and that's my bad. Or Buckskin Pony. Sorry, Buckskin Pony is. But they used to be their record label, or like
Okay.
their crew when they were. That was like, I still have all those.
I was once
stickers.
his roommate, so he's a character.
Yeah, and Keith was their beat maker, and Keith's amazing dude. Like I don't know whatever happened to Keith, but he's awesome. No, but our scene, like our hip hop scene, I feel had a very big lull, and I think it was due to maybe the transition of Kyle living in Vancouver and not being able to host Big Valley Battles shows as often because he moved to Vancouver. But it kind of like I've noticed it, and I've always been watching it and seen it and watched it, but the scene kind of died. And now there is a big push for hip hop again here. And I'm really excited because artists like you, Hazy Maid, Strain K, I think you said his name is. Like these are the artists who are pushing to bring back our scene. And it's really inspiring because like we busted our ass to get to the scene where it was originally. And to see it getting bigger and better it's magical. And it's really cool for me to finally get to speak with the newer artists because I've seen your name around for years. Pretty sure we've crossed each other in Penticton at shows in the past, but to like get to sit down and talk with you about like your art, the way you view the scene is because you're the one who's making it now. You know what I mean? I want your opinion. The scene wants your opinion. And you're going to be the next one inspiring the next generation. So with the scene growing and you performing with like the new crew and getting in and being able to do shows with them, what is your next goal? What is your, I want to make it to here?
My very next goal is to start putting on my own shows, like headlining or doing gigs, and have people opening for me instead of being an opener. And I would say after that is to try and do touring, and mostly like grow the fan base. Just keep growing.
Do you, as you build your brand, a known persona, do you think that you'll ever expand into having bands, like a band behind you?
I do think that, yeah. I've recently jammed with a band for the first time, that rhymed, at Freddy's Brew Pub, and it was an open mic. And so you had the option either you could just play your guitar or the band here could play with you. And I'm like, sure, let's do it. And it just felt so good and natural. And like, and I've been told many times I should have a band. I'm like, oh, And now I know what it feels like and what they mean. I'm like, oh, yeah, so.
I agree. I've been, as we were lining up for the interview, I wanted to go through your music, like your actual catalog, and not just like the little snippets. But I agree. You need a band. Mm-hmm. You need drums and a bass and a keyboard, especially with singing and being R&B with hip hop. There's something different about hitting play on a keyboard or on a computer versus having that count-in of a drummer and the whole energy. That can,
like feeling the live acoustics of it. Like,
and there's a weird connection. Like you're not talking to them, but they're mentally, we're all synced up and we're hitting that 4 count, we're hitting the 1 counts. Oh, we all paused. Like it's just, there's this weird telepathy when you're working with a band, and that's right there. That is what I absolutely love about being an artist.
It's real and natural.
It's not to be performing. It's not to see the reaction. It's that weird telepathical connection that you have with anyone if you pick up an instrument and you're jamming, and then after like a 20-minute jam, you're like, man, that was dope. Like, that right there is what music is meant to be. And I feel that that's what's lacking in music nowadays, is it's very structured. And there's like, that's why I like R&B, I like blues. It's very emotion, it's very feeling based. It's not structured. It has to be done this is the blueprint for the song that will sell. Like, EDM got boring to me because of that reason right there. This is the blueprint that sells. Everybody's drops started to sound same amount of times, and same with hip hop. Everybody's beats started to sound very trappy, and it was like, you know, and there's a resurgence of boom bap now, which I'm really thankful for, because like that old 90s hip hop sound is like, that's what hip hop is to me, is that sampling of old records and like getting dope drum beats and just like feeling it, versus like having these 808 kicks and really ridiculously sounding hi-hats that no drummer could ever play. Like, it's just like there's no musicality behind it. It's because like I feel they're producers just putting beats together and they're not making music. They're just like, oh, this is a dope beat, it's hard, it's gonna sell. There's a difference between making a beat and making music. And I think that you definitely need a band. And if you want to line up a band, I know a ton of musicians that would be down to do it. So that's one thing we could definitely chat about, because like you said, you'd like to branch out and stop being the opener. And I think that is a very powerful feeling when you want to branch out to be you as an artist. And it's also very difficult, because now you have to, there's a lot that goes into booking your own shows.
Oh yeah.
And promotion, but there's nothing more rewarding at the end of the day. It's hard to make yourself known through other people. But that being said, it's also easy to make yourself known with the right people. So I think that's what music kind of is, even when you're writing, right? It's, I don't know, it's a weird thing. When you, as an artist, like when you were growing up, who was your biggest inspiration? And why?
My biggest inspiration. I have a few answers, because the earliest one I can think of is kind of silly. It's a cartoon character named Chip Skylark in a show called Fairly Odd Parents.
Yes.
And he was kind of like a amalgamation of Justin Bieber and Justin Timberlake. And it just, I don't know, the music, the songs they would do were just like, whoa, I kind of want to do that. And then growing up, obviously Michael Jackson was just huge in our home, and he just was something else. I was like, whoa. Michael Jackson was just incredible. He is probably one of my biggest inspirations, yeah. For music, yeah.
I love that. I'm so used to talking to metalheads, and they're always like, "Oh, Ozzy Osbourne," and stuff. So it's refreshing, because I love Michael Jackson, like one of the greatest artists ever, and will always be one of the greatest. And strict, like, you want structured artists, that man, you do not mess up, or you do not have a job. He may have been super nice, but you don't mess up his music. And I think that's what made him great, was he was very, this is how it goes, but very kind to the people who did it. Inspiration-wise, I find it funny that you chose a cartoon character, because what made me want to be a musician, besides my mom being a musician and my dad being a musician, and Goofy movie.
Yes.
Powerline.
Yeah.
Okay. That is who I was like, this is music.
Yes.
Eye to eye, bro. It was mind-blowing for me as a kid, and still to this day I put that song on for my kids now, and they're just like dancing around, and I'm like, oh yes, this is awesome, you guys are gonna be rock stars. But it's funny that you choose like a cartoon character, because inspiration comes from anywhere, right? Like why not? Why not a cartoon character?
Mm-hmm.
If it's inspiring, it's inspiring.
Yep.
And it's funny to ask that question because there's always a different answer, and there's been some really really random answers. Like I've had before different interviews with bands of like homeless people on the street busking is like was their ultimate goal because they thought those people were so famous because they'd stand on the streets and everyone would see them. But I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, no, man, that's like that's no. So it's weird what inspires people to become a musician and make it to those upper echelons as an individual. Our local scene, well, it's very diverse. Do you find that it's hard to fit in with specific crowds because you're not hard body hip hop artist? You're an artist. You're a singer. You're a songwriter. I found it very difficult when I was trying. Mm-hmm. Do you find that? I guess that's why you want to expand, do your own shows. Mm-hmm. Do you have people that you would have as openers? Like, do you have people in mind? Any younger people that you see or know that are up and coming?
Yeah, I do have a little bit. And then I would also probably invite the people who had me open up for them, support each other, kind of thing, give back.
I think that that's one thing that music, as a promoter who puts on like music festivals and has to like choose a headliner, I don't base headliners on popularity. Mm-hmm. I base them on their sound, and depending on the show always builds up to the headliner. So I'm not gonna the headliner's not gonna be the last person in the band or of the night, if that makes sense. So headliner's not gonna be last. If they're not a super heavy band, they'll be placed earlier in the night, but they're still the headliner, if that makes sense to me, because when you're booking a show, you want that evolution of sound to get to a point where people are going to enjoy it. There's not going to be like a group that sends the whole crowd away. You know what I mean? You want to build it so it's like a nice flowing waterfall. And finding artists that work well together is the key to making a really good show. Because you could just book anybody you want. You can book any hip hop artist, and the show can be terrible in the end of the day if it doesn't flow well and they don't work well. So I'm curious. I'm intrigued to see where you take it, because there could be a billion promoters. Like as a promoter, talking to somebody who's going to be a promoter. I find that inspiring because a lot of the promoters don't work together. They tend to, this is our crowd, our fan base, our show. And I feel like the reason that our music scene has become so pocketed is because they're not working together. So it'd be cool to see all of the promoters locally working together to create the best shows that we could for the scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's something that is slowly happening, which is really nice to see. And I want to see you headlining. Like I want to see Unknown Persona popping off with people opening up for my district. Make it happen. But the whole, like, I find, and do you find, like, do you get to do all ages shows?
I have.
Do you enjoy them more than you do 19 plus shows?
Yeah.
I find they're the best.
Yeah.
And not just because, but it's because, like, those kids watch you. Those kids are going home and they're rapping in the mirror. Mm-hmm. That right there is the key to being a musician, is to inspire the next generation. And I find that here especially is very hard to try and book all ages shows. There's a handful of venues that are willing to do it. Especially with metal, it's very hard. But like hip hop, because hip hop is looked at like, oh, they swear. And you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of negative things that go with it. It's very hard to like promote a all ages hip hop show. But that's kind of what you need to do, which is why I love what's going on in Penticton right now with Ignite the Arts, and they have hip hop, and it's completely opened up. And it's like, I would love to see Kelowna do something like that, and not just include like the city booking it, but like get these bookers, like get you to book, get BVB to book, get everybody to work together to build this really cool event for Kelowna. Because we have, and don't even bring in artists. Like, use the artists that we have here. We have so much talent hiding that it's almost sad. Because, for example, like, why can't we have an R&B night? Where's all the R&B artists? We gotta find them, right? So I would love to host an R&B show. I think that would be awesome. So I might end up booking you for that, because I would love to do that. That would be fun.
That would be amazing.
Because I don't know, it's just it's all the same. You know, like, it's all the same genres being played every weekend at every bar. It needs to be changed up. And I find that artists like you are the ones that are able to help push that further than most. Not to sound like insulting towards other artists, but somebody who is able to dance, sing, entertain, it's a different level of than just standing on stage and singing. And I feel that your skills and talent is only starting. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
you're growing, and like you're I don't want to say you're still at a young age as an artist, but like 5 years is where it starts to click in that this is what I want as a goal, a career, a job, and then you do that. So there's another 5 years ahead of you before you're Merkules level.
Yeah.
Before, like, they've been grinding for 15 years, and it's that 10-year mark. Doesn't matter what genre you're in. If you can make that, hit that 10 years, that's where you start to make it. And that's the most defeating thing as an artist, because you've got to grind for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's 10 years of music. That's 10 years of struggle. That's 10 years of everything. But at the end of the day, that's what's worth it. And it's cool to see, because I've watched a lot of artists grow in the Okanagan, and I'm going to be pushing on 40 in the next couple of years. So I've been hosting shows in the Okanagan for over 25 years. And to see where it started to where it is today is mind-blowing. And to see the diversity within just Kelowna, not even Penticton, but like, our artists here need more recognition.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the show's about. And it's artists like you, I feel, need... I'm a metalhead, I'm a metal promoter, and a hip-hop head, so I'm naturally going to say everybody needs more attention, but you appeal to a bigger audience than the metalheads, than just hip-hop artists. And I think that your word could spread further, and message could spread further if it could get out there than most others in the Okanagan, due to what you sing about, how real it is, and the fact that it's not fake. It's something that can just go and go and go, and I want to see it happen. I want to see an Australian tour or something for you know, like, because I feel like you can, and I feel like the style you're doing with, especially with R&B, like, one of my favorite artists is Chet Faker, and like, he writes some of the coolest music, and it's just like singing and songwriting and R&B, but it's so deep, so talented, that it just, you know, it goes and goes and goes. So what advice would you give to an up-and-coming artist who is trying to get themselves started and their foot in the door? Because that is the hardest aspect of becoming a musician.
Foot in the door is in shows?
Even if they wanted to start writing.
My best advice, I would have to say, is to just do it. And let go of self-doubt, let go of people telling you can't do it. I believe that if you really want it, you can get and do whatever you want.
Especially if you believe in yourself. And I think that's the key thing. Because
And like, don't give up.
It is definitely,
Cliche, but
it's not. It's honestly the exact same advice every single musician has given us, but it validates that it's not fake. You know, like that is where we've talked with musicians who have been doing this for 50 years, and they all say the same thing: is just not to give up, believe in yourself, and don't worry what anybody else thinks.
make sure you love it.
I think that right there is a key part too, because you really have to love what you do, especially if you want to make it a career, right? Like if you want to make this, you better love it. Otherwise, it's just going to be like the dishwashing job that you bailed on when you were 14, right? Like a music, it's not called a music career, or it's called a music career because that's what it is. It starts with baby steps, and I feel like artists, we tend to try and do lunges. We're trying to take mile steps. This is where it takes.
How do I get it as fast as possible? But
like I was saying, it takes that 10 years, right? Like if you could give yourself advice, you now, from when you started, you'd probably be in a way different position right now, right? But that's kind of it's the curveball that we're given as artists, and I find that's really what makes you an artist and separates you. There's a lot of people out there who can write music. Not a lot of people who can write music that connects with other people. And I think you're on the right path. And I think that taking yourself in the direction that you want to do is probably the best thing for you. And like not worrying about other people booking you shows and necessarily, like it's great to have people help you, but it's your career, right? Like, where do you want to take it? If you book the shows, you can design the show how you want. And there's a freedom in that I don't think you can get from just being booked. I don't think NF or Childish Gambino, Vinnie Paz, any of them would be where they were if they didn't fully believe in what they did and followed a crew or that motion, I guess it is.
the formula.
Yeah. And like, that's what I hate about hip hop. There's always like these crews that have to work together. I think that's what inspiring about you, is that you do it all yourself. And you're like, I don't need it. I don't need other people. I can do it myself. And I think that is going to shine way further than anybody else's who's grinding with these groups and stuff. Just from experience, it's always better when it's you. And it's your truth. And it's your movement versus trying to... There's only one successful big group in my mind, and that's Wu-Tang, and ain't nobody taking it from them. You know what I mean? So, but even them individually, there's only a handful of them who are successful in the sense of where they're making millions of dollars, and it's because they stay true to themselves. And I think that's one thing that hip-hop artists and artists ourselves, we tend to find way too long down the road. Then it becomes detrimental to our career. So I think taking into your own hands, being your own manager, and finding that team that works with you and fully believes in you is where you'll get to that level. Because you're achieving a level that most people, or you're going for a level that is higher than most people's. And that's what I think is admiring. I think it is inspiring, is that your grind is way different, bro. It's way different, and I really appreciate it, and it's fun to see. Is there anything else, any advice or anything else that you'd like to talk about?
Not that I can think of right now.
You got any new singles coming out?
I'm working on some new music, yes. Have not recorded or planned any releases yet.
I have to ask one question. How did you land Snoop on a track? Not even just Snoop, the game as well. How was it? Was it like was it a contest? Was it collaboration?
Basically, there's a producer named Anno Domini, and he's connected with all those artists, and he sells non-exclusive verses and stuff.
Okay.
Hip hop artist I know, Hazy Made, told me about him and connected me with him.
Okay.
So I got involved into that.
That is so trippy. That is such a cool concept, and like that's something that is new to me, right? That's why I'm like, it's mind blowing because, like, that's badass, bro. That's badass, right? Like you can't help but be like, on that one for sure. But no, I appreciate you sitting down with me and doing this because I'm, like I said, I'm used to talking with metalheads and singer-songwriters. So to hear an R&B and hip-hop artist perspective on the music scene and what can change and what can be better is kind of, it's inspiring because all we as a collective want is a strong, diverse music scene. So I appreciate you sitting down with me and having me at your house and doing this conversation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it, bro. And we'll catch you guys next time.